the officer said. "They've got this crazy mating call that sounds just like a woman screaming. But I heard her crying." "Look it up online," he said with a smile. "I've been fooled by it too. They sound just like a woman screaming her lungs out. It's insane." By the time we climbed back in bed, the gray light of dawn was spreading over the horizon. When I couldn't sleep, I took the officer's advice and looked up fox sounds. Apparently they do make a sound that sounds pretty similar to a woman screaming. Convincing myself that's all it was, I fell asleep, completely unaware that this was the only beginning of our worst nightmare. The following night it happened again, right at 4 a.m. on the dot. The soft crying coming from the forest. I called the police again. Yet again, they found nothing. They also warned me not to call them over the crying again unless things got worse. And so I didn't call them when it happened the next night. And the next. And the next. I chalked it up to the foxes, even though they only made screaming sounds, not crying. I forced myself to fall back asleep every time. We invested in a heavy-duty white noise machine. Bought fans, too, for good measure. Turned everything up to full blast, and for about a week, we all slept like babies. Thankfully, the kids' rooms didn't face the backyard, so they never heard a thing. Then the night of August 24th happened. The night started out well. Emily and I got the kids to sleep early, and we cuddled in bed for a long time. Longer than we had in weeks. "Our little Ellie," I said, skimming my hand across her belly. Despite her being 5 months pregnant, there was barely a bump there. "Are you sure you're eating enough?" "I'm fine," she replied, pulling my hand into hers and giving it a squeeze. "I just don't want to gain so much weight like I did the last 2 times. You know I think you're beautiful at any weight, right?" I asked. "You don't need to do this for me." "I'm not." She smiled and closed her eyes. "I love you, Harry. I love you too." We fell asleep in each other's arms, only to be woken a few hours later by the crying. It was louder, much louder, so loud I could hear it over the white noise. As I tossed and turned my way out of a deep sleep and pulled myself out of bed, I realized why. It wasn't coming from the window. It was coming from our closet. I immediately shut off the white noise and got out of bed. "Who's there?" I yelled, my hand firmly on my phone, ready to dial 911. No response, just more halting sobs, shuddering breaths, soft sniffles. "What's going on?" Emily asked sleepily. "There's someone in the closet." I turned my phone's flashlight on. The light twinkled in the darkness, bouncing off the metal doorknob. "Emily, call the police," I said, advancing towards the door. I heard the soft sounds of the dial tone behind me, then Emily's hurried voice. "We're calling the police," I said. "Tell me who you are." More sobbing. I charged up to the door. I grasped the doorknob. With a deep breath, I twisted and pulled. A terrified woman looked up at me. It was Emily. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her face was wet with a never-ending stream of tears. But it was without a doubt my wife. She sobbed over and over as she stared up at me, as if she weren't quite registering who I was. Then I looked down and my blood ran cold. Her hands rested on her stomach, her round, protruding stomach. She was pregnant.
You can now check if there's a part 2 by pressing share and more.